to order the meeting of Monday, March 8th for the Tracy City Council. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I don't see anybody.
I just want to say play ball.
We're gonna have to bring Diane in for the invocation, I think.
It might burn.
So we will move on to the approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions or?
The only issue, Mayor, is that there was a request by Councilmember Shones to not do the closed meeting tonight, but move it to the 22nd, which is my annual review. If you'd like to do that, that's certainly fine with me. You have my memo on it, but I defer that to the council since it was her request.
I guess I'm good with that.
Can we just do this with all those in favor?
Well, I don't think you need to do anything. You just approve the agenda as amended if that's what you'd like to do.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd have one thing to add, and that would be a possible tour of the liquor store, old liquor store on possibly Saturday. I guess I'd just like the council to discuss that, see if there'd be any interest in just, since we're talking a lot about that, just go over there and look at it.
Okay. Can we discuss that in the mayor communication, or do you want to do it now?
We could, whatever you wish.
Add it to C.
Yeah,
Where? B.
mayor communication.
Okay.
And we're striking the closed meeting.
Yes.
Do we have a motion with those amendments to the agenda?
I'll make that motion to
Second.
approve as amended.
First and second, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there anybody from the public that would like to talk about something that was not on the agenda? Ken?
I'd like to make some remarks in reference to a new building for a community center. If you spent, let's just say, $600,000 to remodel a liquor store, or $600,000 to build a new building, which one would have the greater valuation upon completion of the project? I believe the remodeled liquor store would have significantly smaller valuation because it has a shorter longevity, and the remodel was built upon a very old frame. So if you think about it, you're going to end up with less value if you remodel a liquor store as compared to a new building. A new building would also have greater promotional value for the city of Tracy. When you do your walkthrough at the old liquor store, maybe try to keep in mind or imagine what the floor plan would look like in that place. Remember, I tried to draw out some pictures of it, and I had some trouble doing that. So, if you can kind of think about that would be helpful to make a decision somewhere down the line. Keep in mind that the Lions Club has indicated they want to return to the community center when all is said and done, and when the whatever project is completed. Their membership is 85. Okay. I'll make it. A new building does not have to look like a pole shed. Morton Buildings, for example, can create buildings that look like modern houses. You can have a brick veneer, you can have hardy plank, you can make it look like a regular house. And the big thing, of course, is it doesn't have a flat roof, which is a problem with the liquor store. Morton Buildings also has an interesting project that they do, or option that they do, which is called lease to buy, which means that the city can take advantage of this lease to buy option if they would like to, and don't have to come up with a big pile of money in the beginning. It's kind of like a contract for deed, not quite the same, but I think that might be worth exploring. And we can get estimates for a new building pretty easily. I guess I'm just asking that we consider get estimates for a new building as well to compare them to the remodel. Okay.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Ken?
And that figure you were using, does that meet commercial or state standards or for the Morton building?
Yep. What was the question?
Does it meet the state commercial standards that the city of Tracy would be required to?
Oh, sure. I mean, they're a pretty big outfit, and they do this in a lot of different cities. They do it with churches, community buildings, different kinds of buildings, and they have a 50-year warranty, just like ISG would have. They use the engineering firm, just like any other big company would. And
Is that 600,000 though, that's just your guesstimate?
that's a what if, yeah. Yeah, that's a what
I
if.
think that's what he was asking,
Yeah.
is if that was a
Oh,
hard figure.
no, that's just what,
That
that's,
was
I was just comparing apples to apples. I mean, it could be anything, but I just using two figures that were the same.
They would have to come and explain their system to us to make
Yeah.
sure it meets all state codes. I don't think we could think about it until
Yeah.
they have the proper engineering.
But I do know that they don't charge for their architectural design.
What's that?
They don't charge for their architectural
Nope.
design.
Well, I think it's somewhere in the package.
Well, it's like, yeah, it's not.
Nothing's free.
Where,
Yeah.
their headquarters is Illinois, is
That's
that?
in Illinois, yeah.
Morton, Illinois, I think, isn't it?
Morton Buildings, yeah. And they are really, I mean, there's a dealer in Redwood Falls, and there's another dealer in Walnut Grove. Some of you remember Rick Robinson, that was working for the city at one time. His son, Dylan Robinson, is actually the dealer for Morton Buildings.
Well,
And
he's not really a dealer, he's a head.
I
he's
think
up the
we're kind
ladder.
of getting.
yeah,
off
he's
the
kind of a
subject
head,
here
he's
and
kind of
getting
a
ahead of
manager.
ourselves.
I just happen to know the kid.
He's kind of a manager type guy, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's here nor there.
And either one of them, or they would be willing to come to the council and present anything that you would like as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Ken.
Yep, thank you.
Is it something different than what he was talking about?
Kind of. On
Okay.
that same line, but doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
I won't take as long as him. I don't have any paper to go by, so I'm just gonna kind of blur it all out. I just wanted to let you know that I support what Ken is talking about, the new build. I know that we have had many discussions about remodeling of the liquor store, but just like a lot of other things, a bunch of women and a bunch of men, we kind of have changed our mind about wanting the old structure of the liquor store. We like the idea of having the community center, senior center put over there so we can make use of the patio. We're very much in favor of that. But I think, being said, we'd like to, when you are doing your ISG or whatever you're doing to create some floor plans and stuff like that, that you would also consider the idea of having a whole new structure put in place. With that being said, I've been asked to head a committee of fundraisers to help with a source of money to help with defray the cost of the building. But in order to do that, I need something to show people. So anyway, that's all I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your efforts.
Yep.
Sorry.
What?
Sorry, there's a spider over here. Diane's afraid of spiders, I guess. We squished it.
Oh, we got that done. Anybody else have?
I'll add that to other duties this time.
Anybody else have anything to say?
He is her too,
Okay, anybody else have anything else they need to comment on that's not on the agenda? Okay, we will move on to the consent calendar.
Make a motion to approve the February 22nd, March 1st minutes, the accounts payable and payroll without breakthrough beverage, the planning minutes, the library minutes, and the fire relief minutes.
Second.
First and second, and discussion?
I would like to suggest an addition to the minutes of the March 1st meeting. In the paragraph on page 3, the bottom of page 3, where it says, it was agreed that the options would be to remodel the old liquor store, demo the old liquor store, and build new on the old Masonic lot, and potentially attach a new structure to the VMC. I would like this sentence added, which a fourth option would involve selling the old liquor store building and patio and building a new building on South Street on city property, west of the existing liquor store property. I guess I brought that point up, and I was under the impression that that was, the consensus was that that was an option also. And so, correct me if I'm wrong.
So you brought that up during that meeting? And you think it
Yes.
just didn't get put in there?
Yes, I just
Or is it
think
something
it
you
should
want
be
to
added to
add?
the minutes. In other words, I said that there was also an option to sell the existing liquor store property and build the new building, if that's what was chosen, on city property further west on South Street.
Because I don't think that was agreed upon as an option, and so I guess, I'll be honest, I'm not gonna say you did not bring it up, because I don't have a photogenic memory by any means. We'd have to listen to the minutes. But I don't think that was brought forward as an option that we were going to look at selling the liquor store. When we were going out to, how does it say it here?
I didn't even hear that. If you said it, I didn't hear it, but then we were kind
The
of.
acoustics were not very good.
No, they
They
weren't.
weren't.
Mayor? May
Yes.
I? You know, from the staff's perspective, you're really down to two options. It's either, build a brand-new building or remodel the liquor store. And if you were to build a brand-new building, adjacent to the liquor store or somewhere else, we might sell the liquor store as a matter of practical course anyway. If we felt that there was value there, if we didn't feel like we would just had to tear it down for one reason or another. So, I mean, as a matter of practical considerations, it's effectively an option anyway. You cut it, depending on what you choose at this point, is what I
Because
would
one of
say.
the options we chose was to build new
build new could be on the side of the liquor store, could be adjacent to the liquor store, could be on the Masonic lot, could be, anywhere else, actually, for that matter, but ultimately, it's kind of encompassed to a certain extent, so I don't think it's harmful to put that in the minutes, but at the end of the day, in reality, that's kind of where we're at anyway.
I think we should add that to the minutes, but my concern here is we don't wind up with another Anderson building on our hands.
Was it in?
That's just it. If it wasn't said, we don't want
We
to put
can't
it
add
in
it.
minutes.
Can't add
Yeah,
it.
you'd
It
have
had
to
to
know.
have been
So
said.
Diane's,
No.
I'd say we finish this motion and just have Diane go back and see how it was said. And if it should be added, she can add it back.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's
She's
fine.
like the rest of us maybe didn't hear it.
Right, so, I mean,
that's-
but we can't add it if,
No,
if it
no,
wasn't.
and I'm not suggesting.
No,
that,
I'm just saying, we just have to approve it and then have Diane go back and verify.
But what if she can't verify
Well,
it?
then it doesn't go in the
Well, she
minutes.
should be able to, because it's recorded.
But if it doesn't, if it's not hearable, then she can't put it in.
But Seth, even if it doesn't go in there, it's still an option.
Yeah, essentially.
That's fine, that's fine. Just wanted to bring that up.
Okay, no, not a problem.
We get these masks off, then we'll be able to hear each other.
Hopefully, yes.
Okay, we had a first and second. All those in favor?
No.
Oh, roll call, Diane?
Dave Teagues,
Aye.
Hootman,
Aye.
Schmidt,
I,
Tell,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Van Dyke,
Aye.
Mayor Corman.
Aye. I'm just gonna have you roll call all of them, so I don't have to remember.
I'll make a motion to approve municipal accounts payable for Breakthrough Beverage.
Second.
First and second, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Van Dyke,
Aye.
Tell,
Aye.
Schmidt,
I,
Jones,
Aye.
Hootman,
Aye.
Mayor Corman.
Aye. Mayor, council communication?
Mayor, you just have your board and commission appointments. There's only one that's contested, and that is for the library board. The only difference that we can see between these is Rhonda and Vicky have served previously, or Vicky is serving currently on the library board, and Bruce hasn't. The rest of them, you could easily, approve them, and we would like to get some direction as, there's some empty slots here. We would like to get some direction as far as what you think about how we should try to fill these slots. If you want us to make some recommendations, if you have some names for us to reach out to, we're happy to do that, but ultimately, we've got more empty slots than we do applicants.
Another point I just want to make, sorry. The charter, we have 6 open spots. And the reason for that is because we reestablished it in 2016. So there's a lot of them expiring at the same time. So I don't know if you want to,
How many are on that commission?
9.
9?
I
The
just
6
feel like we
positions
should-
on top of these 2? Or
So that means
there'll
there's
be
15
4
total?
There'll be
after?
4 left. But I'm just asking if you want to set something so that they don't, approve it for a 2-year, some of them for a 2-year and some for a 4-year, until
Did some rotation.
the rotation, and then they'd all be on a 4-year plan, just so that they're not all expiring all at once.
Okay, so when are those other ones expiring?
There is 1, 2, 3 of them in 2023.
And normally this is a how many year position?
It's a 4-year.
4?
Yep. Yep, and you can only be reappointed once. So, there's a lot of
What did you
people.
say? Is only can what?
You can only reappoint once.
It's a 8-year term total, is that what
Yes.
you're saying? Okay.
Yep, according to the charter bylaws. But
But we have nobody up for them spots then, at the moment.
No, that's what we
that's
have.
that's the tough thing. And I believe that the charter indicates that you stay on until your successor takes over, but yeah, we're gonna have a lot of them expiring right now.
So, but Jan and Rhonda are wanting to get on the board right now, right? So
Yep.
they would expire in 25?
Correct.
How many other ones get off on the 25? Anybody else get off on 25?
No, the other three are all at
No,
23.
the other three are all 23, yep.
So if we appointed these two for the 4-year, we'd be fine with these guys, right?
Yeah.
Yep, that would help. That would help. Because then you'd only have 4 instead of 6 expiring. Just so that it's
Oh.
specified during.
I'll make a motion since Jan and Rhonda both have applied to be reappointed, that we accept their applications, or we appoint them to the Charter Commission for 4-year terms each.
You want to make? Never mind. So did Seth second it?
Okay.
Okay, first and second, any other discussion for them? Roll call?
Teagues.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Koopman.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Landau.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Mayor Cormier.
And then we need to decide, we need to pick 2 for the library board, or is-
Well, I suggest that, Rhonda's a good board member, and she's on another number of other commissions. I think she's on the planning commission, and also, is she not?
She's on
Rhonda?
charter, yeah.
We just,
And
And
planning.
charter.
That's correct.
Planning commission, so.
Yep.
I guess I would just like to maybe give a chance to a new board member, Bruce Ruby, and I looked at his application, he's certainly very well qualified, so I would make a motion that we reappoint Vicky Streifel and appoint Bruce Ruby to the library board.
How long is that one then?
That one is 3-year terms.
I'll
but
second
they
it.
rotate already.
Yep.
I'll second it.
first and second, any further discussion? Roll call?
Landau.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Koopman.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Teagues.
Aye.
Mayor Cormier.
Aye.
Then I'll make a motion that we approve Wilmer Engel to the HRA board.
I'll second it.
First and second, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Landau.
Aye.
Koopman.
Aye.
Teagues.
Aye.
Mayor Peters, or Mayor Cormier. Sorry.
I didn't catch how many years that one was.
Old habits are hard to break. Did you say that?
How many years is it, George's
Plus
one?
5.
How many
I'm
years?
sorry.
How many years is this last
For the
one?
HRA?
Yes.
Sorry.
What's this HRA?
That's a good question,
That is a
Mayor.
good
In fact,
one.
I had to ask that question myself before this happened because I didn't know, but basically, it's Twin Circles. They have a particular, it's a Housing Redevelopment Authority, I think is what it stands for, and essentially, it's a federal designation, and we're required to appoint their board. And we don't really have anything to do with it other than the fact that we appoint their board. That's it.
Okay.
And how many are on that one?
I don't know. How many are on that one?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5.
5.
5 members, yep. For 5-year terms.
And then for the rest of our commissions, I would like to suggest that everybody on the council send Eric 6 names by Friday for people that we think would maybe, because you're going to get a lot of people that just don't think of being on a board or commission, but we might think they would be good at it. But if we could get him some names that he could maybe contact the people and say, hey, we had 4 people on council think that you would be good on the police commission, would you consider doing it? Just to maybe pique some more people's curiosity or interest in doing some of that.
How often do they meet?
Police commission, once a year, basically.
Are they involved in any hiring or anything?
Yeah, if you look at the city code, yes, it has some standards for hiring and some things like that. To be honest with you, it's not something I've looked at in any great detail. It's conceivable you might want to look at it again, but yes, they've had some involvement in those kinds of things, yes.
Are all these required to live in town, or which,
Some are not,
so,
some are not.
can you tell us which ones aren't? Because that'll affect the names we can give
Yeah,
you.
the planning, the EDA, the airport, they are not required to be in town.
But the airport, you have to
Have a hangar.
have a hangar or, yeah.
Oh, you do to be on the commission?
Yep.
Oh, boy, or a plane, huh?
Okay, then Shane, that's your job, find somebody, you know who has.
I think actually if you're on the hangar, I think that's the advisory board. I think that's a little different than the airport commission, isn't it, Shane?
There's the advisory board, which can't involve anybody that's on the commission.
Okay, and those people have to be connected to the property somehow, or no?
I don't think the advisory board really isn't an official board, it's just for the master plan purposes.
Okay, all right,
So once the master plan's done, that's just gonna be back to the airport board.
okay.
So the airport board does have to have a hangar or does not?
If they're out of town, they have to have a hangar, otherwise, if they're in-town resident, they do not need a hangar, they just have to be in-town resident.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a mile radius.
There's a mile radius, I can't remember what it
If
was.
you wanna look, let me know. I mean,
Yeah.
I can see what I can find too.
I just think that would
So the
maybe
police
trigger some people.
commission does not have to
Make a
be in
motion.
town?
Police commission, I
I don't
believe,
believe so.
does.
Make a motion on it.
Well, no, they don't, because Bill,
I'll
well,
second it.
they do. They do have to be in town.
Police has to be in town.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably why there's an opening.
They only meet once a year typically for their annual meeting, unless there's other business, which is the first week of February every year, so we just had the meeting. So whoever is appointed they won't have a meeting for a year.
And the planning commission has to
Yep.
be living in town or a business in town.
They should have a business in town.
Oh, they should have a business?
So they
They
don't
can
have to
live out of
live.
town, but they should have a business in town. If that makes sense.
Yep.
They have to have a business in town if they live out of town.
Yes.
Correct.
Otherwise, they could have to
You
be in
bet.
town.
Yes, yes.
How many years is that looking for?
The planning,
Yeah.
that is 4 years.
4 years of position. And does that rotate after 8,
That rotates,
or it don't rotate?
it's all rotated
Okay.
from the beginning. It
Yep.
starts the rotation. Yep, that's 7 members, 4-year terms.
So that's just my suggestion on that.
You want a motion
That's a
on
good
that?
suggestion.
That's a good
Make
suggestion.
that motion.
Make a motion to,
It's tough for someone to do like me, though,
Why?
because I don't know if I would know enough people to send 16.
If you're on the city council, George, you better know people in town.
I know people in town, don't miss that, but they know me for sure.
So you should be able to
Exactly what I was
You
send,
just try your darndest.
Yeah.
you should be able to send, he's saying 6 names. You need to be able to come up with.
Mayor, do we need a motion on this? Let's make a motion on it, David.
There was one.
Was there?
There- Yeah.
I'll second Dave's motion.
Okay, first and second, roll call.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Van Dyke,
Aye.
Whitman,
Aye.
Teagues,
I,
Tal,
Aye.
Mayor Coleman.
Aye.
So there actually is a resolution a little bit later in the packet on this particular item, but we put this on here because we felt that Lexi, deserved an answer one way or the other. If you don't want to waive the fee, you actually don't have to do anything. We can just, but we wanted to give you an opportunity to discuss it.
Mayor, I thought we were gonna talk about visiting the liquor store at this point.
Oh, that's C.
It's after the volleyball thing.
That's after this.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well,
Okay,
I was contacted by only one on this topic, and they suggested since it's a city-owned facility, unless they're having a tournament, do not charge them, rent-free. This one citizen said, because it's a city-owned building, why are we trying to figure out who to charge what? Now, if they're having a tournament, or they're charging money, then, and there's more people here, and we got more cleanup, he thought, and I'm kind of, it's not a her, it's a he, but he thought it would be better, we just didn't charge. And I said, gee, that's quite an expense to the city. But he said, it's a city-owned building, you don't charge to go in the library. You do charge to go in the pool, I guess, but that was just the one person, not that I'm looking for more people to call me, but one person said that to me. And I'm just sharing that with the council. I'm not saying I like it or don't like it, I'm just sharing it.
I mean, this is what I brought up the last time, the 600 for the practices and the tournament, and then changing the use of it, so I like it. I think it gives people an option if they're just gonna use it once or twice, or if they're gonna use it multiple times. But I think we do need to be charging for the stuff we have, otherwise we might as well get rid of our fee list. Because there is expense in using the building, whether it's city-owned or not, so.
Right.
especially the garbage end of it. I think that's a big, big factor there.
Clean that up.
Clean up.
It's very
You know,
bad.
you get charged for having them print you out a history on a water bill, so it's like,
I mean, there is an expense to it, and I think at the meeting, I can't remember how many communities that were checked with that do charge. It's not like we would be the odd duck out. And I do like the idea that we drop it down to the 25. I think that's a little more reasonable for people. So I guess, I think there are expenses, we have to charge something, but yeah, we don't need to be making it a fundraiser for the city, but I think we need to try to cover our costs.
I don't think, let's not charge an outrageous price here so we don't have any use of that facility. Right now, it's not being really used like it should be. Very seldom are people in there. I walk there every day, and there's about 6 of us, and from that point on, there's no one using it all day long. I mean, since the school left. So I think we need to charge, but I think we got to be also careful so people actually use it.
So are you thinking we need to lower some of those other prices?
No,
or-
my big concern, Jerry, is the garbage part of it. That, I know that's a big expense, and so if we can cover ourselves there, it's a very tough situation here to try and figure out a fee for every individual, you know, and maybe we should, I'm sure Diane's thinking about making up some kind of a sheet where they can check a box and then turn it in that way along with a check or whatever. I'm sure Eric and him have something figured out already.
We're getting a little bit ahead of yourself. That's okay. It's a good discussion. It's all part and parcel. You know, we put this here because there's a resolution later to talk about the fees specifically, but if you don't, it doesn't sound like, based on, you know, what I'm hearing, that people are wanting to grant that request, and so you actually don't need to do anything in reality. You don't even need to vote on it. I think we would just enforce the fees that you have set, is what it amounts to, based on the resolution that we have a little bit later.
Works for me.
okay.
Yep. So then we don't yeah, I like that.
Okay, now we'll talk about the request that Seth brought up as far as touring no liquor store.
I'm open for that. I think we all need to go in and get a good hard look at that
I'm open for that
monster.
too.
Would Saturday be a decent day for everyone?
I might not be in town, but I can probably work with either Eric or Shane and go in there before Saturday.
Okay.
When are we doing it?
Is Eric and Shane, one of those two, going to be able?
Yeah, I can let you in on
I'll
Saturday.
be out of town this weekend.
No, but I'll be here. I can let you in.
Okay.
We're gonna do it at 8 and get it done with, or
Mm-mm.
what, do you got a date in the morning, or
Yep.
breakfast?
I guess some of us have things to do other than just get up, Dave.
9? 10?
Yeah, at least 9:30 would be better.
Okay,
Let's go 10 o'clock.
Okay, 10
10
o'clock.
o'clock, I'm good.
And in accordance with keeping with being compliant with the open meeting law,
Yep.
are there some restrictions as far as what we can say or we're not
No,
supposed to say anything?
you
or-
can say whatever you want, but we'll have to notice the meeting
Right.
72 hours ahead of time, and, you know, if Per or anybody else wants to come, they can certainly do that. But it would be essentially a regular, it would be a special city council meeting, ultimately. You wouldn't do anything other than tour, but we have to notice it.
Sure, right.
We can call it a work session.
Yeah, it's a tour, but essentially we have to notice it.
Okay. Do we
I
have,
want to make one other suggestion. I'd like to invite Ken Witt along to represent the senior part of this. If this is
Anybody
all
can
right.
come. Anybody can come because it's an open meeting.
You can make
If
it.
Ken wants to come, or anybody else in the audience or listening on TV could come. It's just open.
okay.
Knowing nothing is going to be discussed, nothing's going to be decided. I'm not going to be there for 3 hours with people talking about it. It's go down, do a tour, done. So I don't want expectations where people are upset because they come down there and now we're not even listening to them again. That's not what this is for. It's a tour.
Good point.
Good point. Do we need to vote on this?
No, I didn't hear anybody say they didn't want to have the meeting, and so, mayor and council communications in reality is that time for you to talk about things like this, and doesn't really require any voting or anything like that. Your formal voting is going to happen, by resolution, so it's no problem.
Okay, which leads us to you.
It leads us to me. We got a few things we want to go over. I've just got a few quick reports on some things to let you and the public know about. Sometime soon here, we're going to start a lighting project in the VMC. A lot of the bulbs are out, and we've discovered that if we replace the ballasts in the lights and replace them with efficient LEDs, that in the long run it's going to save us money. And we're going to get an immediate rebate back from Excel. So that's about a $3,600 project. We'll save $700 on a rebate right away, and then it'll take 3.5 years for that to get paid back. And so we're doing some energy. So if you hear about that or see, that's what's going on at the VMC, and that money's in the budget. There's building maintenance money's in the budget, so that's happening. I just wanted,
Who's doing that project?
GNR is going to do that project. And then, like I said, it's $3,600, and we'll get some money back on a rebate. So it'll be a net of about $2,900 cost. I put on your desk in front of you some of the stuff that we were working on in terms of marketing. And, one of your goals for 2021, at least the goals of the previous city council set out, and we actually put a pretty fair amount of money in for advertising and whatnot in the budget. And I'd like to set a future work session to talk more about this because, we don't really have, time in a formal council meeting, and I think it would be good to discuss it a little bit more. But ultimately, we'd like to do a number of things this year related to marketing of the city. One of them happens to be branding. And so we were working with Above the Fold to help us with some new kind of look and feel and logo designs, and they came up with some ideas. It's not anything we have to necessarily to discuss tonight, but I certainly would be interested in your feedback. And, you know, there are lots of other options as well for these kinds of things. I just wanted you to know that that kind of thing was coming. In addition to that branding piece of it, we are going to be updating the city's website and also creating a second website for the EDA and the chamber, which will essentially be our kind of our marketing website that's going to tell us about how great the city is. My plan is to have one of them done sometime this spring and the other one later in the summer. It takes 3 to 4 months of development time to get these done, and we haven't quite started yet. We've also got a project to, we're going to do the Tracy, you remember from a couple of years ago, there was that pink Tracy Visitor's Guide. It had Tracy in pink on it anyway on the front. And Above the Fold is going to produce another one this summer, and we're going to participate in that with about 8 pages. And so our thought is that that becomes really, you know, that printed marketing tool for people who might be interested in visiting the city or coming to the city. And I thought that was a really neat publication, and so that's, you know, happening again, and we'll be participating in that.
Excuse me, Eric, is that the one where the advertisers basically paid for the brochure?
Yes, it's an advertising-driven deal. But what I've negotiated with Above the Fold is to give us a significant amount of space, 8 pages specifically. So it'll be 8 pages that we can put in there for City of Tracy activities, and then we would pay the production costs, and then whatever the Above the Fold sells in ads is what they make. So essentially, rather than buying ads in it, we're basically taking a big chunk of the space. And I think that's kind of a win-win for both them and us, because it reduces their risk in producing the guide and also gives us a good, you know, marketing tool. Because we don't have the ability to produce a document like that in-house. We can't do that. I mean, Above the Fold is our best, you know, bet to make that happen. So that's planned on coming out in May, so we can kind of hit the summer activities and things like that. And so we think that's going to be a great tool. We have a video that the EDA has been working on for quite a while, and that has been a little bit tough in terms of finding somebody to complete it. But we want to try to complete that video as well. We think that's going to be a really good tool to help market the city. And lastly, some of the things that Jeff and I have been working on is really kind of beefing up our summer activities around town. Some of the ideas that we've thrown around are doing movies in the park, for example. You know, where, you know, Friday night, you know, we put up a big screen and, you know, have popcorn or whatever it is, and invite, you know, families and seniors and everybody to come to the park and watch a movie. Do that a few nights. We've talked about some special, you know, events, you know, at the Aquatic Center. You know, maybe, you know, some adults only kind of, you know, things, you know, in collaboration with the liquor store. I think there's a lot of really neat, you know, summer activities we could promote and do in the city, and that's going to help from our standpoint, marketing the city, getting people to come to town. These are the kinds of things that we're working on, and this is just a real brief overview, but I would like to have a future study session to kind of go over this in more detail. And I'm going to dovetail that into the next thing that I would like to ask a study session for, because I think we could probably do them both on the same night. Last June, those of the 4 of you who were on city council at that time may remember we did a goal setting session to talk about what the goals were, and ultimately adopted a mission and vision and goals for the city. And what I suggest, and what I've heard from the mayor and other people as well, is that we think it's a really good idea to refresh that. Obviously, you've got 3 new people, and I think it's important to get everybody's input into that document. And so what I would like to do is have a study session, work session on that as well. I think we could do the marketing piece and the goals in one night, because I think that, I would guess, that because some of you were here before, and just in my own personal discussions with you, I didn't get the sense that we were going to radically overhaul that document, although there could be some changes to it. And so I think we could do both of those things in one night. We could do that as soon as March 15th, or we could push it out even further than that. It's totally up to you, but I wanted to get your feedback on that and see if that's a meeting you would like to schedule in the future, and when you might want to do that.
That'd be next Monday then possibly, huh?
Well, that's what I was suggesting, but we don't have to do it that quickly. It's completely up to you.
I'm good to get it done. Not to hurry through it, but to get it on the books before we get into spring.
I would also be able to meet on March 15th. I think it's a good idea.
6:30?
We could do it at 6:30. We could do it earlier as well if you'd like. We've started before at 6 or even 5:30.
I won't be back around till at least 6 that day, so
I was gonna say, I wouldn't go any earlier than 6 if possible.
let's just 6:30. Gives me a little extra time to get back.
Sounds good to me.
So we'll do the review, the goals, and the marketing
Yep. At the next study session,
The,
March 15th at
March
6:30.
15th,
yeah.
6:30.
What are we doing that night? The study session is.
Study session, it'll be on the goals that we set, so a revision of those, and then on kind of the marketing plans, that we're starting.
Okay.
Yeah. So those two items, the Ides of March, so let's all be nice.
So, and then the review is coming on the 22nd, is that what you're saying,
Yep.
Eric?
Yeah, that's gonna be pushed to the 22nd,
Okay.
yeah, that's right, because I think a couple council members want a little more time to prepare. Yep.
Okay.
That's-
6:30 it is for that then?
All right, so we'll set that meeting then on the 15th, and that's all I have. We have 2 more presentations tonight, and Kyle from ISG is going to do the next one.
Excuse me, Eric, one more thing real
Yes.
quick. Are we gonna be discussing this on the 15th?
That'll be one of the things we discuss. Yeah, we just wanted to get some stuff in front of you early to have you take a look at. Yep.
Sounds good.
Good evening. Just coming tonight with a quick update on the overall or the city infrastructure projects that are happening right now. Thought it was good timing. We've been talking with Shane and Eric and a number of folks about some of where the projects are at, and then the current issue of pond decommissioning. So I thought it would be a good time just to give a quick kind of an annual overview on where the whole phase 1, 2, 3 and 3A1, all that fits together. So for those council members that maybe weren't on the board at the time or on the council at the time of getting all this whole sanitary sewer improvements done and starting up phases 1, 2, and 3, and dates back to 2015-ish time too. So a quick overview of it was, so here we have a city map. Eric, I'll ask you to flip through a few things here going forward, but so here's the overall city map. You can go through. Phase 1 involved replacing some of the sanitary sewer lines from the middle of the city. Some of the old sewer went through, this is a sewer main that runs from the city out to the treatment plant. And some of the old main was underneath houses and in backyards and was undersized to meet the capacity to get out to the treatment plants itself. So there was some upsizing of the line out to there, as well as removing the sanitary sewer bypass structure that would allow during times of high flow where the capacity couldn't be handled, it would allow the city to bypass that. So that was one of the big triggering points that MPCA doesn't like seeing that bypassing the sanitary sewer system when it's overloaded. But so that structure was taken out with phase 1. Then phase 2 involved the construction of the new treatment ponds. And along with phase 2, one of the alternates that was bid with that was to decommission the old ponds. And at that time, we'll get into that a little bit further, but so that was, that's phase 2, where they're building the new ponds and decommissioning the old ponds. And I think you can go one more, Eric. And then phase 3 that we're kind of currently part of now, that we did some construction on the last 2 seasons, and we just approved another street reconstruction project that's in town. Repairs to the sanitary sewer collection system, helping fix storm I&I, which is inflow and infiltration into that system, sump pumps that are hooked up, roof drains, just old infrastructure that's leaking and taking on a lot of extra water. So that's where we're at right now in the process is phase 3. And you can go to the next one here, Eric, and then I guess as we continue on, there are some more projects outside of that area that are kind of the next steps in the process. So again, just a quick overview. This was the funding packages that were tied to all this were kind of broken out into 3 phases. The PCA is involved with this, along with a couple other state agencies for the funding, that both low interest loans and grant funding as well. So they're kind of broken into 3 separate parts here. Where we're at right now, so we talked a little bit about the past work with phase 1 and 2. Phase 2 had that pond decommissioning as part of it, and during that project, the bids came in so high with the decommissioning alternate part of that, due to the old ponds still having water in them, contractors not knowing what are in them, and as well as we didn't have as robust of a plan for bidding to kind of, the idea I think with the USDA was that to allow contractors means and methods to not really have any restrictions, but that led to a path of some higher bids here. So that got put on hold, and the phase 3 project continued with the infrastructure, the streets and utility improvements. And now we're at a point where we've completed phase 3A1, the stuff that was being done in the last 2 years. 3A2 is now bid, so we have a good understanding of what those costs are going to be. And then phase 3A3 and 3A4 are in the planning parts, but we're also looking at those. We knew as we got further along in this 5-year long-term plan that there might be some adjustments that need to happen on that tail end with that phase 3A3 and 3A4, depending on how things go and how prices go. The one thing that is kind of the reason we're bringing this back is that we need to go back to with the PCA's requirements of decommissioning the old ponds. Yeah, you can pull this up. This is a picture of the old ponds here. Yep, that's fine. So as part of their requirements in building the new ponds, the old ponds need to be decommissioned. And since that step was kind of skipped, or there was a pause on that step 2, or in phase 2, that we need to come back to that now and take care of that. So it's not necessarily that we're adding or changing anything, we're just going back to that step. Now that these ponds are drained down, we were able to pump, Shane was able to help pump some of the sewer over into the new ponds, and well, some of the other ones kind of dried up or leaked out as well. So, but now that the old ponds are drawn down, we're back at a point that we can look at them again, get a better idea and understanding, and then and respond to the MPCA and kind of their letter of saying what's your plan. Something needs to happen with the decommissioning part of this step here. So that's the kind of the reason that we're bringing this tonight, is that I think going forward in the next coming weeks or month or so here, in some of these next meetings, we're going to talk a little bit more about the funds available that were set aside for phase 3A3 and 3A4. Do we need to readjust some of those funds back to this pond decommissioning to take care of what's kind of higher on the priority list? So I think you can go to the next one here, and then this is again just showing, like I said, this treatment pond decommissioning is in phase 2, and we're kind of in this middle of phase 3 range, so we're just kind of jumping back to phase 2 right now and trying to take a look at that pond decommissioning again. So
How much water's in the ponds, the old ponds?
they were
Bone dry or?
Pretty much dry.
Yeah.
There's some snow melt in there now, but
right. Yep. There's some snow melt now, but I think I would imagine they'd be pretty dry here going forward. We had a
I walked
fortunate
quite a
runoff.
ways out in them last fall, so I didn't even get mud on my boots. So I mean, it was pretty much bone dry.
Yeah.
So, that being said, there's not much in there then to move out?
There is, yeah.
But it's just dry?
It's just
Yeah,
dry.
it's just dry now. So that's what we're looking at right now, talking with the MPCA and what the plan would be to move forward for that decommissioning. There's been some past sampling done. We did a little additional surveying to figure out how much, what that thickness is of the sludge material that's there. And then we talked a little bit about, there's some city farm fields adjacent to possibly land apply to, and then we'd have to find some other land that we could apply to as well. So
have the tests, have they indicated some hazardous materials in the sludge?
nothing outside of the ordinary, I guess, what was anticipated. there aren't any red flags so far. I mean, there's obviously, there's nutrients, there are, you know, some of the different metals and different things like that in the sludge that are known, but nothing that is above and beyond what a typical biosolid is what the terminology is called, what that would look like.
Well, why did they have to be taken off that site? What hazard are they posing?
That I don't know what the direct reason why they cannot just be buried in place. It's something that the MPCA requires them to be removed. So it's a state requirement that it be removed and land applied and incorporated into, say, a farm field, or it could be, you know, a number of things, maybe landfilled. There are some different sites that are good candidates for using it and spreading it out and not having that. It kind of is a concentrated contaminant in one location, but as it's spread out, it's not really as a big of an issue.
So this is just something that needs to be put out for bids, like, you guys already got paid for your part of it, right? So are you getting...
So initially we developed a grading plan for it. And like we said, so we do have some plans for the grading for the excavation, and there's some stockpile materials next to the ponds where the new ponds were dug out. That dirt was saved next to the old ponds so that it could be filled back in. We have some plans that we can start to use, but what we'd be working on now would be more in depth than what went into that initial plan set. We're a good ways along. I mean, I don't mean to make it sound like there's an extreme amount of work. We're a good ways along talking with the MPCA, coming up with some of this, but there's going to be, you know, working with some of the local landowners to have some agreements, and maybe that's some staff time or legal time. And then there would be bidding and the inspection. The MPCA also requires materials testing within a month of when it's going to be applied. So right before it would be applied to a farm field, they would have to test the biosolids and then test the field it's being applied to. And so there's some construction materials testing and involved in that as well.
That's something you guys do?
That would be something that some of our, I guess, sub-consultants would do that we typically work with for materials, yeah.
Mayor, let me be clear about this. Yes, you will have to bid that project. And to be candid, what's happening here is that we have to decommission the ponds. We have phase 3 and phase 4, and we don't have enough money to do all of it. Because the pond decommissioning was cost more than we anticipated. Because pond decommissioning is something the MPCA told us we have to do, and because it was in phase 2, that in our recommendation has to be the #1 priority, which means that some of phase 3 and phase 4 are not going to be done for a number of years. And I know that's hard to swallow because, you know, we've been telling the public that this project was going to happen like this, but it's not going to happen exactly like it is. Now, the project that we just bid, phase 3A2, is fully funded, and the stuff that's happening this summer and in next year is going to be completed all the way. But there are some portions of the phase 3A3, 3A33, and 3A34. I wish they could have come up with a better numbering configuration. That will not be done exactly the way that we anticipated. Now, we're going to try to find some additional monies for that. We reached out to PFA, and we'll bring you some better options. But ultimately, we're working on the financial plan right now to show you what we think we can do. That's the next item that you're going to see. We just wanted to make sure that you had kind of the background of this whole project and how we got to where we are today, and understood all that before we started having that financial discussion. And so it's not good news, because it means that some of the project won't be done right away, but it will get done eventually with some future phase. That's more direct than Kyle. Kyle's more diplomatic than I am.
go for bids on that then this spring?
Well, that's what, I think, that's what the discussion is right now, is what the timing of that might look like and how things are readjusted, so.
Part of the issue, council member, is that we still have to have an approved plan by the state. And so that plan isn't quite done yet, and so they have to approve it. And then we can't bid the project until after they approve the plan. Now, we think they're motivated to do that. But we're up against a bit of a timetable, but because we have to be completed in the first part of 2023, or some of our grant funding goes away. So we have 2 years to finish this. And so we need to do it now to give ourselves enough time to make sure that we use all the money that we're entitled to. That's one of the big considerations.
There's companies around that does this?
There are, yep.
Decommissioning?
Yep. Yeah, we've reached out to a few different contractors as well, just to ask a few questions and give them a heads up that it might be coming. Yep.
Could you give us a little idea of how many truckloads of materials have to be removed?
Well, from a general perspective, I think across the bottom of those ponds, we're looking at 1 foot to 1.5 feet of material. And that's over approximately 40 acres or just under that, I think Shane can talk about. So we're looking at, that adds up a lot. The initial quantity we're looking at is about 75,000 cubic yards, which a typical truckload is 15 to 20 cubic yards. Start adding into the thousands of truckloads.
So it's 75,000?
Yeah, after the recent survey that,
So about 3,750 loads.
yep,
And didn't you say that one time roughly 400 acres would be
400.
needed?
yep.
Generally,
I
that's.
think generally we're kind of in that 350 or 400 acres,
Yeah.
and of which I know there's some discussion with the MPC on what can and can't be used, but I know the city has some tillable acreage next door here, and then there's been some discussions with the Foltzes again, on some of their fields nearby. In the past, at least, there had been.
So then all of that truck traffic that would go out on that tar road by the Catholic cemetery then generally?
Potentially, depending on where it would go, I guess. There'd be a good amount of it that would stay right there or on the neighboring farm fields, as much as possible would stay, where it is. We can reuse that 40 acres of site as well but potentially, so. Yep, that's something that would need to be taken into consideration.
So really, the next step for us is for you to bring forward a more detailed
Yep.
plan.
Yeah, the next step would
A
be,
proposal on how we're going to afford this.
Yes, and it's going to be a bit of an estimate because we won't have a final, it'll be an engineer's estimate on the pond decommissioning, which we think is about $3.6 million at this point, but you might get a bid that's a little bit different, and then that changes it after the fact. But essentially, yes, that's what's going to happen next. And then what we'll want you to do is to approve, kind of that restructuring of the plan, because it's going to be a little bit different than what you've seen in the past. And then that will give us the authority to kind of go out and, start, to finish the project up. And ultimately, we'll be asking you to make the pond decommissioning the #1 priority of whatever monies are left, and then prioritize the rest after that.
So who puts this proposal? Is it them?
Kyle's, we've had a couple of meetings. We had a good financial meeting a couple weeks ago with RD and a whole bunch of people from the state and us and ISG, and so we know what the numbers are at this point. Really, it's a little bit tricky because there's 4 different pots of money. There's water, sewer, storm sewer, and then kind of our ineligibles fund, because it'd be used for everything. And the grant money is tied to those categories, and so you can only use the grant money for certain categories. Like you can only use the water grant money for water improvements. You can only use sewer for sewer improvements, and so it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, where you've got all these pieces you're trying to fit together. And essentially, yeah, ISG and, you know, with our help, ultimately, we're going to put together a financial plan so that you know how all those pieces fit together.
So this is one of the things Krista was brought on board, she'll be helping. with
Krista was
this?
on that call, yes. In fact, I had a conversation with Krista about it at the end of last week, and she's seen the same documentation, so yes, she'll be involved in this. This is the kind of high-level kind of financial work, ultimately, that we'd been missing previously. And this is going to be, I know this is kind of bad news, but I'll tell you what, it is darn good news that we didn't get to the end of this project and say, oh, we forgot about the pond decommissioning? And now we have enough resources where we can actually deal with this issue. And so sometimes that's painful for that to come to light, but we're in a position where that situation could be solved, because we don't want the MPCA to come down on us and say, oh, well, you know, you guys have to shut down your system. And so it's actually good news that we caught it this early with a couple years to spare.
So is this October deadline, is that, that it has to be done by October, or we just have to have a plan to the MPCA by October 1st?
We,
Plan was due last spring, council member.
Well, so then what's this October 1st? What's that date for?
that is for having pond decommissioning work done.
So it's gotta be done.
We've talked with the PCA, and they, in general, are pretty reasonable to deal with on these type of things. Without saying that it's going to be completely okay, the last discussion I had with them was, as long as we're seeing progress, there's a schedule in place, there's a plan to get to plans and to get bids and to move forward with some construction, they're going to be likely be lenient on that.
I just was hoping it wasn't supposed to be done because farmers
Correct,
putting it
yes.
on their field by October 1st.
That's not very practical, and we brought that up to them too and said, look, that was one of the things we brought up in that call with them a week ago, is that the schedule is, we're more than likely not going to have this completed by that time, and they said as long as things are moving forward, that's...
So then what are you going to put as the completion date when you put the bids out then?
I guess our initial thought would be to possibly the following spring, so that there could possibly be work done after harvest this fall, into the winter to whenever the ground is still workable, and then potentially finishing things up in the spring prior to crops are being planted again. So that would be my initial thought on timing, and that's open to discussion with the PCA and city and whoever else. But
I would guess you'd have more trouble with the spring applied stuff than anything. Because
Yeah.
I can't imagine anybody wanting it done in the spring.
Right.
With the compaction issues.
Yep.
So, I don't know, it's a tight,
Well, one of the
tight window for a lot of loads.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the part of the land application does include plowing it or disking it in too as well, so.
Hooey.
Yep.
What do I say, hooey?
So does the person that bids it, do they have to like bid hauling in dirt except for what you guys have saved?
The amount of dirt that's saved should be balancing, or it's the right amount to fill in the ponds and to take down the berms, and there shouldn't really be a lot of imported dirt. It would just be the biosolids leaving the site to whatever farm fields they're going to, and then if you can go back to that picture, maybe Eric, of the old ponds, there's kind of the creek that runs in between, so there's some amount of dirt saved here for this to fill in this area, and then there's another, if you drive by out there's some hills out there now that weren't there a few years ago. So, waiting to go and fill in these ponds, and then it's partially filling in the old pond and partially taking down the berms that are there too, so a balance in between. But and ultimately, like Eric said, this is, it's not great news, but this is work that we knew needed to be done right up front. We know that, and I think going into it, this phase 3A, 3 and 4, there was possibly going to be some flexibility at that tail end. At the end of such a long process here, there's going to have to be some amount of flexibility built in there. So I guess if you wanted to go to the very last slide, Eric, there's just a shot of, we can and we can bring this to the next one. The orange area was the area that was constructed last year. The blue is this 3A2, which was just bid. And then the next parts of it that were potentially to be funded were the purple, was another reconstruct area there, just south and east of, Hunter Street, First Street, and then Morgan and Roland there. And then that was due to be reconstructed next in line. And then the red areas, we're planning for sanitary sewer lining. So it wouldn't be street work, it wouldn't be water main work, it would just be kind of a cast in place liner inside the old sanitary sewer main. So that was the red areas that we're calling 3A4, but.
So you're talking the purple and the red are what might be postponed.
Yeah, and I think the intent would be, if some funds are shifted to the pond decommissioning, there's still gonna be some amount left over, and it's just a matter of where do those go next, you know, and whether it.
Boy, those roads in that purple area are bad.
I was just thinking the same thing. It's too bad they can't swap the one that's going now for that one, because they're worse than.
Yeah, we don't, yeah, unfortunately,
Yeah.
you know, that's kind of the horses out of the barn situation, you know. And it really is going to be, like I said, a jigsaw puzzle, because when you talk about the roads being bad, that's true. And so anytime we, you know, want to dig it up, it's going to be a problem. But what's paying for the roads is essentially what's called the ineligibles bond in the 2019 B, and that's our flexible money that we can spend on almost anything. And so we don't want to lose any of the grant funds, and so if we have to spend some of that money on water and sewer, it would be better than losing some grant funds. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but this is what we're going to have to figure out here in the next few weeks.
And one reminder on that timing too, what you said, you know, maybe the streets might be a little bit better, or some blocks may be better than others, but it's the utilities as well that we're looking at, you know, the sanitary sewer and the
So
water
the
main.
blue
that
is
are
what's going to happen this fall.
starting here and, yep,
After the blue, it went to that purple,
correct.
that little bit of purple right down
Yeah,
there?
there's a little bit here and then a couple blocks, just the south side.
And then when is the green stuff?
The green would be kind of the next subsequent phases of
For the
There-
red, right?
3B
3B
is,
or 4. Or
3B would be something like 2028. I mean, it's a ways out. You've got some financial issues. There is literally no funding for that at this point. It's just for 3B, for the green, there is no funding for that currently. And so that's going to have to be a future discussion about how do we fund that project, and it might be rephased again, you know, based on the conditions or anything that doesn't get done, you know, for these last two phases are going to get pushed off. So I don't know the answer to that question yet, because a lot of it's what you can afford. You do have some bonds that are going away in that same time frame, but it's not funded currently.
And we have to wait for the county to do Center Street too, correct?
I do have a quick update on that, actually, because I had a conversation with the county engineer about that a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him about Center Street, because there was a grant from the state that we were looking at applying for. We needed a county sponsor for that because we couldn't apply for it. And he said, yeah, we'll sponsor it. We really want to get Center done. But we were under the impression that you guys were going to do it with your street project first. And I said, well, no, what? And so there wasn't enough time, because I literally had like a week. And I couldn't put together, you know, the engineering and everything that needed to be done in a week in order to apply for a grant for Center Street. The short answer is that the county wants to do Center Street. It's a priority for them. And they will help sponsor us for a grant from the state in order to do Center Street. We will need to coordinate with the street project, you know, because if we're doing some work at the same time, we don't want to cut up a brand new road. But ultimately, that grant cycle is going to be, it won't be until February of next year. But we need to put that on the plan so that we can get Center Street done as quickly as possible, because literally the county put it on hold because of our street project. And I don't think we knew that.
No, that's kind of why some of the street work was done the way it was, because we didn't want to be ripping up our street when the county came.
Yep, and so there was certainly that was their impression. I couldn't tell you exactly, you know, what the circumstances are. I'm just relaying the conversation I had with the county engineer.
So they understand it now, though?
Yes, I said, well, we want to do the street first, you know, and coordinate our activities, but they don't have specifically money to do it. You know, ultimately, we would want them to do them. It's a county road, so we would want them to apply, sponsors to apply for the grant, and then use county money as the match for the state monies, essentially. Is what we're gonna ask them to do, because it's their road. But they had literally put it on hold, not knowing what we were doing with our street project. So
I'm not doing that. I'm not
just-
doing the eye roll thing to
just,
you.
well, you did the head twist,
Yeah. It's just like,
twitch
I
thing.
can't believe they,
This is what I was told. I'm just
Okay.
relaying the information.
I will shoot the messenger.
And we'll work on that, but it's gonna require us to get a grant from the state, because that's really the only way we can get a decent pot of money to make that happen.
Good to know.
Eric, South Street, when are they gonna restripe that street?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question. Do you know?
They were doing it every 2 to 3 years, and I don't think I've seen them do it.
You don't know if you're in the bike lane or what lane you're in when you go.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
That's a mess. You just kind of drive wherever and hope.
You
Police
hope
department
Jason
don't
isn't
see us.
behind you when it
Yeah.
At
happens.
least they filled the potholes.
Let me see if I can get an answer. I'll ask the county engineer and see if I can get an answer, and I'll get back to you.
Perfect.
I don't know if I have a lot else.
Start working your plan.
That's right. I mean, that's ultimately what the idea is, that we're looking out into the future here. We've got a few years to plan these next couple short-term projects, and then, like Eric mentioned, that 3B, which is another 5 or 8 or years out or so, that we can start looking into that as well. So, planning ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
The last item is a report from Chief Lichty. We had a request from a council member to talk about our emergency procedures and what the role of city council was in that, and I'll leave it up to the chief.
Good evening.
Jason?
I've been asked to go over the disaster plan. Our disaster plan is basically a 45-page document that's kept by the police department that covers what to do in the event of a disaster. Our disaster plan covers different disastrous events and has how the city will approach them. It's specifically geared towards if we had another tornado or another flood or catastrophic winds, that type of thing. The plan assists with duty or assigns duties to the city staff, has a large reference manual for people that we would call to assist if we needed help clearing trees, payloaders, or other equipment. We have a long list of people who we keep active with current cell phone numbers and contractors' numbers. Something as simple as keeping track of who all the bus drivers are for a year in case we have to call people for transportation issues for an emergency, if we had to get as many people out of one in town because of a major gas leak or something like that. We could line up and locate all the bus drivers. Basically, it's a huge reference manual for us. I've been asked to explain some of the duties of the mayor and council. Basically, the mayor's duties are to activate the Emergency Operations Center, what we refer to as the EOC. Typically in our plan, this is the fire hall if it's left standing in the whatever disaster we're facing. And the reason for the fire hall is because it has an emergency shelter in it. It has all the computer programs we have for monitoring weather, and it has the tools in it that we need to effectively run an EOC. The ambulance garage we have in our plan as a triage area, because before they would be transferred out to a hospital or whatnot, we would obviously be triaging casualties, and the ambulance was a perfect spot for that. The mayor's duties would also basically be receiving initial damage and casualty assessments from myself as emergency manager. be the mayor's duties to declare an emergency if it was necessary, instruct and designate a public information officer, and this could be whoever the mayor designates to talk to the press at that time. Determine if state or federal assistance is required and to help make that request. So that would be the mayor's duties. The city administrator is listed in the disaster plan as overseeing the administrative functions and finances, assisting the mayor, and acts as an emergency shelter director, which would be the VMC if the VMC is standing. The duties of the council members would be report to the EOC and consult with and advise the mayor and staff. Within 72 hours, it's in the plan to hold an emergency council meeting, and this would basically be to vote on directing financial support to what's needed. And also it's for the city council to assist in any areas that could be designated to help. My duties as emergency manager, I'm responsible for putting this plan into action, ensure that all the possible warnings are given, and this is part of my duties as emergency manager and chief police. Like every month, Shane and I are working to make sure that our sirens are working on the first Wednesday of the month, how they're functioning, and if they need maintenance. It would be up to me to activate the Emergency Operations Center and staff, advise the mayor, and coordinate outside agencies that would be coming in to help. As chief of police, it would be my duties to close down and secure areas of the disaster, coordinate fire and ambulance and rescue personnel, and coordinate the necessary documentation that will be needed later. One of the reference the flood, which was probably our most recent disaster that we faced where I was emergency manager. Just something as simple as the couple hundred photographs that I took during the day of where the water was. 10 hours later after our catastrophic rain event, you could see water lines, but you couldn't visually see where the water was, and without all those pictures to show this is why we had this damage here. So part of the documentation was vital to that. The fire chief's duties are responsible for fires and hazmat issues, working with law enforcement for scene security, and manages fire department staff. Shane's duties is public works, get the city employees to work, help clean debris, line up contractors for debris removal, and assist with law enforcement and fire. Ambulance is to get his EMTs to report and assist in search and rescue. And it even goes down to city hall maintenance staff duties, which would involve making sure that the generator's functioning if we didn't have power here, and overseeing the shelter with the city administrator. Those are some of the assigned duties of the staff here for the city, and what would take place in the event of a catastrophic event, I guess. So I'll entertain any questions you have on it.
I know you listed like the fire hall in here, but what if say the fire hall is gone, do you have a backup spot, or if that's gone, you gotta rethink it?
Well, the Veterans Memorial Center is kind of our go-to for putting people that have been displaced in the event. We have Red Cross cots stored in the VMC, a bunch of wool blankets and stuff. We have facilities here, and if the fire hall happened to be one of the areas that was wiped out, we would just revamp that to another area, such as like maybe the high school, if that end hadn't been.
You don't specifically have you got an A spot, but you don't have a B spot, is what I'm trying to find out.
Right, yeah, not specifically, but we would utilize what was left, yes.
Okay.
Jason, where does the residents of the trailer park, do they come to the VMC? If they're during an emergency, would they come down?
They have in the past, yes.
Okay. Are they all aware of that out there? I mean, how would they know where to go?
I think that's on the park owner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Has he got it posted somehow, or how would they know if he isn't?
I don't know. I don't have very good communications with the current park owners. So,
So would that
I'm just
be,
curious.
would that be a fault of the city then, that we're not coordinating that with them, or no?
The
No,
park
because
owner.
MPC is identified as a emergency shelter or whatever, but it's up to individual property owners or whoever rents or whatever to tell their renters
Where to go?
where to go.
So if you don't.
And if I was renting out there, if he didn't tell me, I'd be asking, where do I go? Because I'm in this trailer, where do I go? I mean, that's not our responsibility to spoon feed.
We do go out there and announce if there's a warning or a watch, just like we go out and warn anybody that's camping out at Swift Lake as part of the officer on duty, it's part of his duties. If these watches or warnings come into effect for our area, we do go out and make sure people are aware, so.
I want to add that, you know, a lot of these times they end up with a shelter-in-place order anyway, and you don't want people leaving. You know, that's essentially what happened with the stay-at-home order earlier this year, because we're technically under a state of emergency now still, that the city council adopted a year ago because of the COVID pandemic. And so, you know, one of the worst things you can do under certain circumstances, if you have a shelter-in-place order and all of a sudden you got a bunch of people running around town getting in the way of emergency responders and people trying to get to a situation, you know. And so, you know, I think this situation kind of dictates exactly what we want people to do. And so I don't think we want to send the message that you're supposed to come here or go there, you know, because it's going to depend on what the emergency happens to be. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's important to think about.
It is part of the licensing rules for the trailer park by the Department of Health that they provide a shelter for the facility. So it's pretty much up to the park owner to designate that with their licensing, so.
I know a town in Minnesota that they closed the park because they didn't have a shelter. So, just what I was at, question says.
Thank
Any other
you.
questions?
Are there extra copies of this plan that if someone wanted to look at it, are they available, or?
I could get you a copy.
I have a copy of the plan. If the council would like me to email it to them, I could do that.
It's not something that I post publicly because there are people's private cell phone numbers on
Oh,
it.
sure.
I'd have to redact all the numbers out of it.
Well, I think it's really good that we've got this plan in place. And you know, we hope we never have to use it, but it's certainly good that all that advanced preparation has gone into developing it. And I assume you and Dale and others review it periodically and.
Yep, also, the school has a plan also that has a board or a commission that we meet like every 3 years and review their plan compared to our plan type thing also.
And the hospital was out at the last
Yep.
one too, because I was
So-
out there.
Do they have a shelter at the hospital, Jerry, where the patients would go, or what do they do at the hospital during an emergency?
We have internal rooms.
Yeah.
We don't have a basement.
That are designed for, okay.
Well, I'm not saying they're designed for that. There's no windows or.
Fruit cellar.
Yep.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank
Right.
you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
New business, you ready for that, Mayor?
Yep, we're ready.
Okay, first item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-30, and basically that's just allows us to expand the hours of the VMC, you know, allowing me to hire a couple of extra people in order to do that. And that's essentially what we discussed a week ago tonight.
That's the Eagles.
At the Eagles, yep.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-30.
Okay.
First and second, any discussion?
I guess I have one. Ken, you've looked over all this and it looks good as far as,
I've not looked at that one,
Okay.
other than the work study session.
okay.
It's expanding the hours from 11:30 to 4:30?
11:30 to 4:30?
Yeah.
And then weekends,
And
That was my
You said-
understanding, yep.
Well, to be clear, the resolution is not to expand the hours, the resolution is to hire 2 additional people, so that we can't
I thought
expand
we
the
were
hours.
expanding the hours.
We are expanding the hours, exactly what Ken indicated, 11:30 to 4:30, and 3 weekends a month.
But the resolution is for hiring 2 people to
Yes, that's
cover the
correct.
hours.
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion?
And the
Roll.
hiring, of course, is going to affect when we can put the lease into effect.
The biggest thing that's going to affect that ultimately is what the governor tells us we can or cannot do. Now, I suspect that it's going to lift, and you're going to maybe ask me, when are we going to hire those people? Because the short answer, I don't know, but we don't want to hire them too soon because, you know, they may not want to wait around. They might need another job or something. But on the other hand, we don't want to wait until the last minute either. So we'll hire them as soon as we think that something makes sense. I don't know, sometime this spring into the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if you know, these kinds of restrictions are being lifted all over the country, and as vaccines become more prevalent, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened, but we don't know yet.
Well, and I would suggest between Ken and Ron and George, you guys seem, you know, you're active, you're on that commission and everything, to be talking to people, because like the one thing we said, it could be someone that's going to be down there on the Saturday or whatever, that they could be applied or could apply to be that person. So talk to people, so when we can pull the trigger, we can pull it as fast as we can. That's one thing you guys could do to help move this along quickly once the governor lifts the restrictions. Because we're going to be kind of tied until people apply. But hopefully once we can advertise, you guys have your people all lined up, they apply, we hire, we open.
Sounds easy.
I know it sounds easy, but if we try to pre-plan, we can at least try as best as we can.
Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Teagues?
Aye.
Whitman?
Aye.
Landay?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Tell?
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
Mayor Corman?
Aye.
The next item, Mayor, is 2020-31, and basically what this does is amends the fee schedule. This is part of the discussion we had earlier. It has 2 different changes. One is that it changes the gym rent for 2 hours from $50 to $25, so lowers that amount for people, and adds an option for a season fee of $600 if you want to take it for the whole season. That would cover 10 practices and 1 tournament. And so it gives us some additional options to offer people and lowers the cost. And to be honest, we weren't entirely sure that there was any specific direction for Monday as far as what these numbers should be. We kind of read the tea leaves a little bit and thought that that probably made sense. So if 625 is not the right number, you know, we can modify that, but that's how we wrote up the resolution.
I'm good with it, because that's what I brought up, so. So I'd make the motion to approve that resolution 2021-31. And then let Lexi know if that's the change that's going into effect.
What you're saying, and we're not wavering anything here.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
We're just adjusting.
Okay.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second the motion.
First and second, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Schmidt?
Aye.
Tell?
Aye.
Landay?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Whitman?
Aye.
Teagues?
Aye.
Mayor Corman?
Aye.
Mayor, the next item is authorizing the release of an RFP for services related to a new community center, 2031-32. And just to be clear about this, a week ago you narrowed down the choices to either remodeling the liquor store or building a new building. And where that new building is, we don't know at this point. It hasn't been decided. But ultimately, those are the 2 choices that you narrowed it down to. This resolution is basically authorizing an RFP that would do three things. And I need to be clear about one, because when I wrote the resolution, I don't think I was clear about something. One is that it would include, per your request, is a full feasibility of those two choices, either a new build or remodel the liquor store. So to try to get more detail and answer the question of what are the unknowns at the liquor store, what specifically is a new building going to cost on specific sites, things like that. You know, a little bit more detail than the kind of cursory look that ISG did the last time. And on the resolution, it says full feasibility of the final two building options, but then I didn't actually say what those were when I wrote it. I think we all knew what these were, but I think you want to indicate in the motion that those are the two options. The second thing this does is...
Okay, wait. Clarify again.
Yeah.
Clarify your clarification.
Yep,
It's remodel the old liquor store
or a new
or
build.
build new.
Right.
But we're not saying we're gonna say this place new.
No, there's nothing that
Could
says
be
what
on top of
location.
the old liquor store.
There's
or
no
next
location
to
for
it.
that.
Okay.
I think that this doesn't say that specifically, but I think the feeling, you know, is that it's generally going to be downtown, and the preference is probably that it be on property that the city already owns, so we don't have to pay for it, which limits it a bit. But ultimately, it limits it basically to the old liquor store location or adjacent to it, or the Masonic lot. Those are probably the only two places that you could put it downtown that you'd have enough space to build a building of that magnitude. But ultimately, it's those two choices, yes. Remodel liquor store or new building. That's it. And on number one on the resolution, it says full feasibility of the final two building options, and I should have added two building options, which are remodel the liquor store and a new building. And I think when I wrote it, I kind of knew what it was, and so, but I wasn't thinking about that level of detail. So I would suggest that you amend that when you make the motion to make sure that that number one is clear. Second thing that the RFP is going to do is that includes, you know, community engagement on that space, including, you know, how big is it to be, what's going to be in it, what kind of activities, and that includes working with the community to help figure that out. Okay, that's something that's been important to, I think, the entire community and important to the council too. The third one is not something that you specifically requested on Monday, but the staff believes, after our discussions, is important to include in this. And that is that would be a full design of the final building option, whatever that is, wherever it is. So at some point in the middle of this process, you're going to say, well, we're going to do this. And when you're narrowed down to that choice, then you would, you know, design whatever that building is, or remodel, or whatever it happens to be. And so I didn't want you to think that this was going to be like a bunch of different designs. But we feel that by combining all of this into one piece, that makes sense. Because if you're going to have somebody doing the feasibility, it makes sense from our perspective, they would also do the design of the building. What this does not include is construction of any kind. Okay, so you'll have to go through a whole nother bid process for that. You will be required to do it, because by state law, required to do a full bid on that, because it's going to be over $175,000. That's state law. Your policy requires over $100,000, but it will for sure be over $175,000. I guarantee you that. And so, just so you know that, and there's another issue too, and I just want to, you want to make sure that you're as objective as possible. And conceivably, when something comes back to you, whether it be a bid on a future construction project, or whether it be this design, you want to make sure that you are completely objective when you're evaluating those things. And you don't want to put yourself in a situation where maybe someone else was bidding on the project and they challenged your objectivity. Which anytime you have these kinds of bidding situations with construction contracts, particularly ones of these size, I have seen contractors challenge these things in the courts. That wasn't done fairly. This wasn't done properly. You didn't follow the rules like you're supposed to. Now, Matt's not here tonight, so I'm not going to give you any, I can't give you any legal advice on this, but I just want to caution you to think about maintaining your objectivity on all of these projects moving forward, so we don't put ourselves in that kind of situation. But ultimately, this RFP has nothing to do with who builds it or what gets built. This is just kind of an evaluation, some community engagement, and some design, for whatever the final product it is that you choose. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I guess I lost a little bit with what you've been saying. I apologize for that, but we're asking Company A or Company B, give us a bid, what it would take to build a building?
No,
No?
we're not asking them what it would take.
Where does that-
Ultimately, they will give you engineers' estimates as to what it's going to cost, but you will then have to go and bid that for somebody to construct it, and then award that to somebody else, and that will determine what the cost is. But because the engineers' estimates are just that, they're just estimates.
But at least this way, you go with the final drawing goes to all the parties that want to bid it, and they're bidding apples to apples. They're not going to say, well, we could do 500 more feet and for this and everything. No, this is the building we want. Now you bid it, and you're comparing apples to apples. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to be
I understand.
pulling up the
Here's the
drawing.
architect, make it the design and do the feasibility thing of it.
I guess I don't know, it just seems like we're throwing a lot of good money at something that we don't have to.
I totally
Understand the bid.
I totally agree with you, George, but you know what? I think the public has forced us to this because they feel like they don't know if they can trust us, trust INS, trust Jeff and Eric, that I think the public has kind of forced our hands on this, that we need an outside company coming in, doing these studies, do the meetings with the citizens, because you know what, we've already done a survey. We've had a couple open meetings and everything, and we continue to have people bring the same things forward time after time after time, like they don't trust us to make a good decision. So we need an outside firm that has no skin in the game other than their money and their reputation, which is important enough, they'll do a good job. But we need someone else coming in here, meeting with everybody, saying, this is what you were told, this is what we came up with based off what people are saying. Because you know what? People are changing their minds. If you can't sense this, people, I'm getting very frustrated with this topic because I cannot keep track of what people's minds are saying because they're flopping from here to there, back here, back there, and we sold it out from under them. They don't even remember. We had public hearings, we had committee meetings, we did a survey. So I'm saying, fine, we'll spend some of you guys' good money. We'll have an outside company do this RFP, or we'll do the RFP to get an outside company, and then maybe they'll trust the outcome. Because right now, George, I don't feel like they're trusting us.
Well, Jerry, that's not true, but I'm not going to get into it with you, okay? It's not true, absolutely not true.
My feelings, your feelings.
What is it? What's going on? It's not true, but I'm not going to get into it here tonight at the council meeting, okay?
No, this is where we need to.
Well, no, I'm just saying, some of this stuff is not the blame of the people of this city. Okay? That's all I'm going to say. Like Paul Harvey says, you get the rest of the story.
Exactly.
And it hasn't all come out every time.
Okay, whatever,
I think
whatever.
we need to move
Okay, you
forward
guys.
and look at
Absolutely.
other
Seth,
This
you're
is actually
correct.
for an architect
It's
to
water
draw.
over the bridge, so what?
This is actually for an architect to draw up the design
Yeah.
and not just do that. But I do have one question for you.
Yes.
Can we not ask the company that we're going to hire if they can't be like an advocate too, as far as like trying to get funding from different places?
That's a good question. We could potentially talk to them. I know some of these design firms will do those kinds of things where maybe they know, what potential pots of money are. And I think that could potentially be some help. I didn't specifically put that as a requirement in here, although we could put that in the RFP, we could put that in as like to have, tell us about your experience in this kind of area, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
And I think that makes sense. And you know what, also what was said earlier on, I think is right on. If we're talking about raising money, and I've had calls from people also saying, hey, I'll help raise money. I do think you got to have something to show them about what it is that you're doing before you can raise money. And so I think there's an appetite for that in this community for sure. And this will help us get to the point where we have something to show them too. That's another reason to do this.
That's correct, Terry.
Yeah.
So my other request is, because this is such a hot topic,
Yeah.
is after you write this RFP,
Sure.
if you could like send it out to the council so that we can.
Get
so
some
that way-
feedback?
Yeah, so that way people don't think it's just like
Absolutely. Yeah.
you doing it and it's like we're.
I'm happy to get some feedback, and I, what we can do, if you want to even make it formal, and if you want to make it public, I'm happy to bring it back, the full written RFP, back to the council in a couple of weeks, for it to be approved to be sent out too, for that matter. I didn't want to write it because I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. It's a little premature at this point, but I could do that if you'd like to, or we could do it more informally, via, email. We have to be careful about that because could be construed as a serial meeting. If I'm asking for feedback on something and you give it to me one at a time, and that would violate the open meetings laws. But the most transparent way would be to bring it back in a couple of weeks to you.
I think you should do that. Then they can't say
Yeah.
you didn't do it right, or
Yeah.
if that's okay with
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah,
We'll still get it ahead of time with the agenda and
Of
everything.
course, of course.
So we'll have time to review it if we have
Yeah.
questions.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm
Absolutely.
assuming the public will also, if they
Sure.
read it online.
It's a public document. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It'll be out in the
That'll be
open.
good.
Yes, it will. It will.
Okay.
Do you, well, I was wondering if you had any idea what that's all gonna cost us, but what you're getting the bid for.
I knew somebody was gonna ask me that question. I think what I wrote in there is I don't know,
That's the
usually,
farmer in me, Eric, I'm sorry.
usually these kinds of design services cost between 5 and 15% of the project costs, but it depends on how big it is, and there's a lot of different factors in that. I don't know, I don't think it's gonna cost as much as the $150,000 that we have set aside for this project so far. So it'll be less than that, but your guess is as good as mine at this point.
Sorry to
I wish I knew an answer to that question. You always have the option, if it comes back and the bids were so high, to say no, right? I mean, you don't have to accept one of them just because you release it. So if it's something you think is just totally out of line, like we did with the Anderson building, you can always reject them.
Okay, with those changes, would somebody like to,
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-32, and then down underneath where it says the council authorized the city administrator to issue the RFP, including underneath number 1, add to remodel the old liquor store or build a new building.
and you gotta add the.
Is that what you said, sir?
Yeah, that'll make it more clear. I
Yep.
think we know what two options are, but 25 years from now,
You might
somebody's gonna
wanna put
wonder what
in
that
there,
is.
at this point, we don't know what location. We might wanna put
No,
something.
we don't know what location.
We might wanna add that. What do we got
So
there?
we also need to add the things that I added,
Uh,
the advocacy part and
It's in there. What do you mean, the advocacy part?
the asking them, like you said, that it says on there that we'd like them to also,
Oh, to look for funding?
yeah, be the advocate for us.
Do we want to add that into the RFP?
We
or do we
can, if you want to
be-
add it as a fourth, you can do that. Include, potential funding opportunities as well. Yeah, that wouldn't hurt.
So please, Diane, make that number 4.
Yeah, can you tell me what Dave said, Diane?
Yeah, I can.
Or let Dave repeat it.
How about evaluate and recommend funding
Availability options.
opportunities or availability
Be
or,
an advocate for us for like if you have to go like with legislators.
I'm sure they would, yes.
That was a good one, Dave.
Okay?
Do what I can.
So could someone read all this back before we vote on it?
You got it, or you want me to do it?
To approve 2021-32, to include under full feasibility of the final two options being remodel of the liquor store or build new, and to add a number 4 for
Location
funding.
undetermined.
Location.
That location is undetermined at this time.
Yeah.
And then number 4, read that.
Yep, the
please.
funding evaluation, or evaluate and recommend funding from the company that is awarded the bid.
Will they get the whole advocacy part of that?
We can add advocacy. Yep. You're the best advocates for that, to be honest, as a city council, and I mean that seriously. You know, if there's people that want to advocate, it's you. They'll be the best ones.
Did we get a second on that motion?
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Tell.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Teagues.
Aye.
Whitman.
Aye.
Landine.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Mayor Plummer.
Aye.
Thank you, council. The last item is awarding agreement to New History for a level 1 reconnaissance survey of properties within the city. This is a project we've talked about a few times. We received a grant for it. We received a $15,000 grant for it, specifically from the state historical society. And this is basically just to have us do a bit of a survey of properties around town that may meet the National Historic Register qualifications. And there's a couple reasons why we'd want to do this. One is because, you know, having these kinds of properties in town become kind of a sense of community pride. It's a good marketing tool, things like that about your town. But secondarily, if you can get some of these structures, like City Hall, for example, on the register, then you can access additional funding for improvements. And so, you know, for example, we might be able to get a big chunk of the tuck pointing that needs to be done on this building paid for, you know, through that. I know they've done tuck pointing projects before on historical buildings. And so we put in a couple $1,000s, I think, for this project, and the rest is, the balance is essentially being funded by the state. Now, there were we issued the RFP, and there were 3 people who made proposals. We are recommending, meaning myself and Val, our librarian, and I evaluated the RFPs. She wrote the original grant, actually. And we believe that New History is the best option. They're all basically costing the same amount of money. There's a couple things we liked about New History. One is they seem to be more specific in terms of understanding something about Tracy in their RFP, as opposed to the other ones seem to be a little more generic, and so we like that. And it came down to that, and the fact that they had some very specific timelines about when the project should be done. We have to have the project done by the end of this year in order to receive the grant. And so it's important that we stay on task with that. And so they seem to have a really good handle on that. And then their staff was also really well-rounded. Some of them had historians, some of them had architects. This firm had a historian, an architect, and a professional engineer who is the founder of the company. And so we like the well-rounded staff too, compared to the other ones. So that's why we're suggesting New History. You can, of course, do whichever you wish. And with that, any of the people we think can actually do the project, so that's not a concern of ours at all. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So will this include privately owned properties also?
It can, yes. It's not just government properties. So one of the ones we'd like to evaluate is the old hospital, for example, across the street from the park. And it doesn't mean you're going to be on the or even apply for. This is just an evaluation if they think you qualify.
So would the private property owner, if their property was selected, do they have the option of declining the honor if they wish, or
Sure,
is it up
sure.
to them?
Yeah, it's up to them ultimately as a private property owner. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, using the old nursing home as an example,
Yeah.
if they were selected, would that possibly help provide some funds to help them
Yes.
do their tuck pointing?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yep, yep. It becomes a source of kind of something to brag about, for that property owner. And in addition to that, they can access some funds from the Historical Society for renovation.
Okay. And then the idea would be then the selected properties, maybe you put up a little plaque or have the option of
We could.
putting up a plaque.
We can put up a plaque, yep, yep. You've been in other communities like that, potentially, is what it sounds like, where they, some have so many, you could go on a tour practically and see which properties are on the list,
Okay.
Yep.
So how do people with public or with private property get on the list for them to look at?
That's going to be ultimately the historian's call in terms of, what they'll do is they'll do some kind of background research, at the library, the Lyon County Historical Society, the Wheels Across the Prairie Museum, things like that, and start to kind of develop a list of buildings they think would be appropriate. And it'll be a consultative process ultimately in determining that. But I would say that if we have a particular piece of property that a private landowner is interested, that they would need to let us know for sure so we can evaluate it. That doesn't mean that necessarily it would be, but I think it's important for them to tell us. I've never actually gone through this process with myself before, and so we're really going to be leaning very heavily on the consultant in this case.
I think it's a good program, a good boost in the arm for Tracy potentially. So I make a motion to accept the proposal recommended by the staff from New Horizons, was it?
New history.
New History.
I'll second that.
First and second, any discussion?
And it's their review and documentation, everything that's got to be done by the end of this year.
Yes.
In order to get it paid for through that grant.
Yes, we've already received $13,500 of it. We get 90% of it up front so that we can pay the consultant. But we have to document all of that money that we spent, by the end of the year and provide the final report and all of those things. And you'll get a final report in front of City Council too. So when that report comes through sometime in the fall, probably September, October, we'll have the historian come in and talk to you about what they found.
And then let's say, they come down here and look at the VMC.
Yep.
And go, the work that we feel should be done on this to preserve it is A, B, C, and D?
They won't go that far. This is really more an evaluation of whether or not they think it would qualify and also to start the forms. So like if we wanted to get it on this building on the National Historic Register and they felt like it qualified, then they can pull together the forms and the documentation in order to make that happen ultimately.
Gotcha.
But as far as what needs to be done with the building, they're not going to go that far with it.
Okay.
So then the funding would come from a different source.
Yeah, it's a two-step process. So if we had wanted to get funding, we would then have to apply for another grant and then use that. And the grant cycle for the Historic Society is in November. And so my hope is that we have an idea maybe of some buildings that we're going to start the process on and then apply for a grant for next year for some of those and do this again.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Diane.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Tell,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Landay,
Aye.
Teets,
Aye.
Sutton,
Aye.
Mayor Cronin.
Aye.
all we have.
Nothing else, the motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, here we go.